Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Lori Curtis, and I am a safety advisor with the Construction Safety Association. As you're probably well aware that this week is Fall Prevention Week, and we're doing some webinars and sharing some resources. And on top of the webinar that I'm going to do today, you can also go to our website. We have tons of information there for you. And I'll make sure to bring up our website information at the very end of our time together. Okay, so we'll get started. before we jump in, sorry about that, guys. We're going to go over a couple of housekeeping items. There's not many housekeeping items because your microphone is muted, but if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. You can see that there on your dashboard. And if I don't see them, I have my coworker here, Tammy, that will see them, and I will answer at the end what I can for you. And of course, if I don't have the answers, I will get them for you and get back to you. So before I actually jump into what we're doing here today, I wanted to take a minute and go over some statistics with you so we can have an idea of where we are with fall protection in our country and in our province. If you have a look at this slide, currently 1,000 workers in Canada die on the job, and 250,000 workers in Canada suffer work-related injuries or diseases every year. And you can see that this came from the Association of Workers' Compensation Board of Canada. And now if you look to the other side, you can see that we're going to go over some statistics for Newfoundland and Labrador. So for injured workers, we've had 556 workers in the industry receive medical aid or lost time from work as a result of a fall. 5 workers lost their lives as a result of a fall in this time period. So this is from 2016 to 2020. You can see costs here. These falls resulted in approximately 38.6 million in claim costs, and the time falls resulted in over 51,000 weeks of lost time work for employees and lost productivity for employers. So we'll take a minute and we'll have a look at our outline. We are going to discuss what is fall protection, what is a fall protection plan, legislative requirements for a fall protection plan, additional considerations and best practices that we can discuss, responsibilities when it comes to a fall protection plan, and then we're going to take some time and review a template that we have developed here for a fall protection plan. So we're going to take this time as a review. What is fall protection? Fall protection is a general term for any means of assuring that a person or an employee, a worker, is not injured or killed from a fall. So it's a combination of steps, of procedures, of a program, along with the equipment and the hardware that we use. And it's really utilized to prevent someone from falling, or if someone does fall, it protects them against serious injuries. So now we're going to look at what is a fall protection plan, and that's really what we're going to discuss here today. So we'll look at the legislative requirements. A fall protection plan is really specific to the work site and the activity. Okay, so in our companies, a lot of us, we have programs and procedures, and it really encompasses, what kind of training we do. We use CSA equipment and etc. But our fall protection plan is geared right towards a specific activity and task that's going to be performed by a company and the workers of that company. It has to be designed to address existing hazards and of course any potential hazards that we could be faced with. Our goal is to eliminate these hazards. And of course, if we cannot, we're going to reduce them to a level that the risk is reduced that we can work safely within these fall hazard conditions. This is a time that we're going to raise workers' awareness. We are going to review the plan, discuss with them, and go through the scope of work. And if anything, it is the law. It is a legislative requirement in this province. So when is a fall protection plan needed? Where an employer excuse me, uses a fall arrest system or a personal safety net as a means of fall protection, the employer shall have a written fall protection plan that specifies the procedure to assemble, maintain, inspect, use, and disassemble the fall arrest system or personal safety net, the procedure for the rescue of a worker who has fallen and is suspended by the fall arrest system or personal safety net but is unable to effect self-rescue. And this is from section 142, subsection 10 of the Newfoundland Labrador Occupational Health and Safety Regulations. So just as a reminder, um, fall arrest is an active means of protecting workers from falls in elevated work environments. In a fall arrest system, the risk of falling is always present. However, the system is designed to minimize a worker's injury should a fall happen. And a complete fall arrest system includes an anchor point, a body harness, a connector, a deceleration device, and of course an emergency plan, which we will discuss. Safety nets are designed to catch personnel who fall from bridges, buildings, towers, dams, silos, and other type structures. So what must be in the plan? A fall protection plan should include the following: the date the plan was established. It is so important to include the date and scope of work as site conditions may change during the duration of the job. As well, the location and the actual equipment we're utilizing. For example, pending the current um, location or change in work, a worker could switch from a horizontal lifeline to a vertical fall arrest system. And as well, we have to have procedures for assembling, maintaining, inspecting, and proper use. This is where you want to be specific. You can actually attach manufacturer's instructions and specifications if you like. You know, assembly, we think of anchorages, maintaining is our daily visuals, inspection is the pre-use by the worker, as well as a competent inspection is required. Has this been completed within the last 12 months or less, pending the manufacturer's instructions? Does everyone involved understand the proper use of the equipment, its restrictions, etc.? And communication to everyone involved with the proper handling, storage, and securing. For example, most manufacturer storage areas should be clean, dry, and free of exposure to heat, fumes, and weather conditions. And you can see there at the bottom I have rescue, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail now concerning rescue. So as you can see here, there's another bit of the legislation I'm going to review. And it says an employer is required to conduct a risk assessment in a workplace where a need for rescue or evacuation of workers may occur. Where the assessment shows a need for rescue or evacuation, written plans and procedures are required to be developed and communicated. And this is from section 38 of our Newfoundland Labrador Occupational Health and Safety Regulations. The regulations also specified written rescue and evacuation procedures for work at high angles. So what should we consider for rescue? Well, when it comes to working at heights, there is always a potential to fall. Gravity is not going anywhere. Um, when we say establish a rescue plan, employers and supervisors have to ensure that employees who have fallen in a safety net or suspended in a fall arrest system can be lowered or lifted to safety as soon as possible. This plan has to ensure that other workers are not put at risk as well. It has to be site specific. And of course, our roles. Who is calling additional personnel if required? For example, medical assistants. Who will be performing the actual rescue? Whether it's assisting with self rescue or we're performing a rescue as a team. A big message that I would like to get across is that it has to be site specific. It has to be easy to understand for employees. Everyone has to understand what their role is in an emergency. And of course, this plan needs to be clearly communicated. When we look at rescue equipment, if it is needed, it has to be accessible. It has to be inspected before the job to make sure that it's working and capable of assisting with rescue if needed. And tomorrow we have another coworker who will be going into detail about rescue plans. So stay tuned for that one. And now we're going to look at, when we look at fall protection plans, we're going to look at additional considerations and best practices. So when we are putting together our fall protection plans, questions to ask and answer as part of the fall protection plan is, if my equipment is exposed to any of the following conditions, will it perform as expected? For example, environmental conditions like rain, snow, or ice could affect the lifeline, the stretch of the lifeline. Work processes like dust, sand may affect a self-retracting device and its locking mechanisms. Electrical lines or apparatus, we don't want to use wire uh, rope lanyards in these situations. We look at heat, welding debris, or open flame, or chemicals. And all of these can contribute to tears, cuts, frays, abrasions, discoloration, burns, holes, and really overall deterioration of our equipment. And some other additional considerations, questions to ask ourselves and answer as part of the fall protection plan is verification of training. Has each worker that is required to work at heights received at minimum the 2-day approved fall protection training? If they have completed the 2-day training within a 3-year period, then have they received the 1-day recertification before their expiry? Ensure that workers are given training and instructions on equipment and procedures. This includes making them aware of work plans, rescue plans, fall hazards at various job sites, and providing instruction on particular equipment that they will be using. This is all part of training. As well, depending on the type of work, additional training may be required, such as confined space, traffic control, WIMIS, first aid, power line hazards, etc. And when we talk about means of communication, yes, we'll get into responsibilities of communicating the plan, but we really have to be sure, do we have cell phones? Do we have accessibility to cell phones? Are they charged? Do we need radios or satellite phones if necessary? Are we in an isolated area? This has to be thoroughly discussed. Although it's not legally required, we highly recommend ensuring the fall distance clearance calculation has been completed by a competent person, verified on site, and communicated to employees. Have we determined the free fall, the proper height of the anchorage, object structures below, and if an employee were to fall, do they have proper clearance to do so? In addition to that, additional consideration, is a job safety analysis. We just don't want to show up on site filling out a fall protection plan. Have we prepared for this job and considered potential and existing hazards? Have we identified the risk and put controls into place? And when you're writing your JSA that will accompany this fall protection plan, these are items that you should look at. For example, determining the type of fall protection that we may need, identifying anchorage points for personal fall arrest systems, identifying controlled access zones, identifying who can enter those control access zones, and of course, like we mentioned earlier, determining an emergency response plan. And so you can see from what we have reviewed that most, if not all, of the components of a fall protection plan can pertain to all jobs at a height, right from proper use of equipment, rescue plan, and ensuring the plan is implemented and communicated to all personnel involved. So just to give you an idea, if you look at the examples on this slide, a fall protection plan can be used for utilizing scaffolding, erecting, dismantling scaffolding and working from the scaffolding, open-sided floors, working platforms, runways, walkways, balconies, ladder use. We could be in a travel restrict situation, or a fall restrict situation where a fall protection plan would be really effective for these particular jobs. So now that we've looked at legislative requirements, what has to be in the plan, we're going to look at responsibilities of this plan. So let's start with employers. It is the responsibility of the employer to ensure that fall protection plans and procedures are developed and communicated whenever a fall arrest system or personal safety net is used. These plans, must comply with Section 142.10 and, of course, all the requirements of Service NL, including provisions for rescue, which we reviewed, obviously, in previous slides. The employer must ensure that resources are provided for the implementation of the plan, for example, job-specific work procedures, practices, what equipment do we need on site, training for their representatives, i.e. a supervisor, their workers. In addition, the employer must ensure that the process for developing fall protection plans is monitored and evaluated on a regular basis. Okay, let's talk about our supervisors. So before I actually go through specifically what a supervisor is responsible for fall protection, I just want to review the legislative requirements of a supervisor. So they have three responsibilities: advise of the health or safety hazards that may be met by workers in the workplace, provide with written or oral instructions regarding precautions to be taken for their protection, and is the employees using or wearing protective equipment, devices, or other apparel that the Act or the regulations or employer requires to be used or worn? So now when we move into the site-specific fall protection plan, in my classes, I actually say this plan is very similar to a permit. This is the checked act, with a supervisor's eyes. Is everything that we're agreeing to and checking off present and available and put in place? Um, Supervisors are responsible for communicating the proper instructions to workers and for supervising that whole fall protection plan from start to finish. Additional best practice is to have our supervisors participate in supervisor training. So they are clear as to their role as a supervisor and specifically trained in fall protection. So they are up to date on any changes in CSA standards, legislation, informed on various types of equipment suitable for specific tasks, free fall clearance, and etc. And of course, ensuring that workers wear their fall protection equipment properly. Have these workers been trained and are they competent to do the job? And now we look at workers. And for workers, it is their responsibility to participate while this plan is being reviewed. They must speak up if they have suggestions, any concerns, or questions about the job they are being asked to perform. They are required to follow procedures and plans that have been communicated to them after the initial review and participation. They're required by law to inspect their fall protection equipment pre-use, and this is for their safety, and report any fall hazards or defects in fall protection equipment to their supervisor that they must detect or come across work once work commences. Their job is to not carry out work where there exists an imminent danger from falling and not use fall protection equipment that will create a danger to health and safety to themselves, their coworkers, or other persons not engaged in their employ. So everything that I just described, this is where workers must use their three rights. The right to know the fall hazards on the job site and controls to be put in place, and their right to participate, as mentioned, ask questions, give suggestions, bring up any concerns, and the right to refuse any work that they feel is unsafe to them, especially after this plan has been reviewed, so they can bring this concern to their supervisors before work commences. Okay, so now we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to go through a fall protection plan, a sample template. So what we've done here is we've added in elements that we think are very important to have in the plan in addition to what legally has to go in the plan. So at the top, we've got a little area about supervisors, and I'm just going to take a minute to read that. And I think it's a great review for supervisors as they're filling out this plan. Supervisors must review and ensure that workers sign off on this fall protection work plan prior to starting work in an area where a hazard of falling exists. Workers must be trained in fall protection and the systems and the equipment that will be used. This plan will be posted at the work site for the duration of the work activities and must be used in conjunction with a comprehensive and effective fall protection procedure. So as you can see underneath, we have left room for the company, the site, the scope of work, date, and valid too. As mentioned earlier, it is so important to include the date and scope of work as site conditions may change during the duration of the job, as well as the location and the actual equipment. For example, pending the changes in work, a worker could switch from a horizontal lifeline to a vertical fall arrest system. The next part here, we see fall hazards at the site. So it says outline the specific situations where fall protection is required, considering what objects are below the worker and how far they are below, such as if we're working on steel, heights between 4 and 8 meters above, and etc. And so this is where we could actually attach our pre-job hazard assessment or our job safety analysis. And then below that, we have an area where fall protection systems to be used on site. And this is where, as is written here as a reminder when you're writing out the plan, details about the type of equipment, such as travel restraint, fall arrest, fixed anchors, lifelines, um, shock absorbers, etc. The brands and the models of the components, the length of the lanyard, all the details of the systems that you're going to be using. And then we move on to the next page, and this is where we put in anchorages to be used. As you can see, we have written here, be specific. Describe the precise anchor point, including anchor strength and location relative to worker and how the worker will attach to the anchorage. We may be familiar that, of course, anchorages have to be rated for 5,000 pounds. And then below that is where we have an example of clearance requirements for fall protection systems. Again, while we didn't really specifically reference it in the slides below, go through it in detail, the slides before, determining fall clearance is also essential before working at heights in order to avoid contact with lower levels or obstructions in the event of a fall. Always refer to and read the manufacturer's instructions for complete details for calculating fall clearance. These clearances should be recorded on your fall protection plan. As well, there's an area there for free fall distance. We want to make sure that our workers are anchored appropriately, and so that way if they do fall, that their system will work most effectively of how it is engineered to do so. And of course, once personnel have received training in fall protection, they should have a clear understanding of total fall clearance required and free fall distance. And then we have on the very last page is procedures, or second last page, sorry, procedures to assemble, maintain, inspect, use, and disassemble fall protection systems. Be specific here. You can attach manufacturer's instructions, specifications for the specific equipment being used, and ensure that workers are trained in these procedures. So this is something that we talked about earlier about the assembly, like the anchorage, maintaining daily visuals, inspections pre-use by the worker, and ensuring that that competent inspection has been done for our equipment at least within the last 12 months or per manufacturer's instructions. Does everyone involved understand the proper use of the equipment, its restrictions, etc.? And then the last page we have here is the worker review and sign off. The employer must ensure that all workers affected by this plan have read and understood it. Prior to all workers signing this plan, the employer needs to ensure that workers have read and understood all information in and attached to this plan. And so this would be at the end of this communication process where the employer or their representative, a supervisor, would say, this is the plan. I've just reviewed it in detail. Is there any questions, suggestions, concerns? This is where additional conversations may happen, or if everybody is in agreement, they would then print and sign their name to prove that they were there, they participated, and that they agree with this particular plan. And of course, on the bottom there, you can see completed by signature and date. But in addition, the person may or may not have been the supervisor that completed it, but we want to ensure that the supervisor has signed and dated that plan as well. So in summary, we have reviewed comprehending the legal requirements for a fall protection plan and reviewing, the concept of fall protection. We talked about allowing for additional considerations and best practices, understanding responsibilities of personnel involved in the plan, and of course, the development of the fall protection plan. So if you have any questions, I have not checked the chat, but I will now. And like I mentioned in the beginning, take some time to visit our website, uh, the recorded webinars that we've already done, the resources that we've put in place. We've put together toolbox talks, safe job procedures and practices, checklists, anything and everything that we felt could be effective and really useful for all of you to use in your communication and your toolboxes and during your fall protection plans as well. And then you can see our website there is www.nlcsa.com. So I'm just going to take a minute there and check. Okay, looks good. So you can see that Tammy put in the chat there that for more information on Fall Protection Awareness Week, you can visit our website, and she has put the link that will bring you right there. And that is it for me. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.